Hey guys, I'm Kaylee. Thanks for joining us today. We're in the final week of our series on relationships entitled And It Was Good. And we've been looking at questions like, what are relationships for? And we've seen over and over again that we, human beings, are not at our best when we are alone. Relationships, even though we hate it sometimes, actually make us better. They reflect back to us our less desirable character traits. They help us to grow. They encourage us when we're deflated and down, and they humble us when we're too puffed up. They give us a focal point outside of ourselves. In short, they make us less selfish. And let's be honest, the world could use a lot more of that. And even if they did none of these things, even if they gave us none of these benefits, relationships would still be important because people in community reflect the image of God in a way that isolated people simply cannot. God, who existed eternally as a community unto himself, Father, Son, and Spirit, living in perfect unity as the Godhead, he existed as a community always. And we were made in his image, which means we were made for community. We were made for relationships. We can't perfectly reflect the image of God when we are alone. And I don't mean unmarried, so don't misunderstand me. You can reflect the image of God regardless of your marital status. Your kingdom impact is not beholden to whether or not you're married. Alone just means alone. So regardless of our marital status, it's not good for us to be isolated. We're supposed to be with our families or our found families, our friends, the people that we do life with, the people in our church, the people in our pickleball leagues. We're supposed to be around and with people, the people that we love and God has given us to be loved by in return, because we reflect God better together. Isolation does not produce a perfect reflection of a communal God. Last week, Johnny walked us through 1 Corinthians 13, that passage that is so often used for marriages. And it's beautiful, but it's also, to its original audience, was meant as an indictment. Paul was saying, these are the things that love looks like, and you're not doing them. Is this what your love looks like? Paul says you claim to love one another, but love is goodness, patience, kindness, humility, gentleness, forgiveness, not keeping a record of wrongs. Is that what your love looks like? If not, don't call it love. That's not what it is. This week, we're dropping into a passage from Paul's letter to the Roman church. Our passage today will be Romans 12, verses 9 through 18. If you're in the NIV, there's a little subtitle to this passage right above verse 9, which says, Love in Action. And I think this is a great way to wrap up our series, because we now understand the purpose of relationships. We understand what characteristics there are in good relationships. We've seen what love looks like, and now we are going to look at what love does, practically speaking. So if you're someone who feels like there's never enough practical application in sermons, this is your week. Be careful what you wish for. So we're going to take a look at these verses together, beginning in verse 9. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Don't be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Romans 12, 9 through 18. So there's like 15 different actions and commands in these 9 verses, and we're going to touch on every one of them. So I should have you out of here just before Christmas. I'm kidding. I will be brief, mostly. I struggled a bit with how to approach this passage. I really like to do historical context and word studies because I'm a nerd, but I think we've gotten sufficient coverage of those things over the previous 3 weeks. And so I wanted to make this sermon pretty hyper practical. So this sermon is going to be more of a series of vignettes of places that I've seen people embody these commands, love in action, in my life. And my hope is that as I share these stories with you, you might find a place of connection and see where God might be calling you to love in action in your own stories with the people in your life that he's given you to love. So to set the stage, verse 9 begins, love must be sincere. In the Greek, that word for sincere is I'm gonna mess this up. Anoupokritos. Yes, anoupokritos. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. There still is a little word study here, sorry about that. Upokritos is where we get the word hypocritical. You can kind of hear the sound in there, upokritos, hypocritical. So anoupokritos means unhypocritical. We know what hypocrisy is, right? We've seen it. It is the person who can recite all the verses about generosity, but they are a terrible tipper for the barista at Starbucks. I think it's really hard to love in an unhypocritical way. It's one of the reasons why it's so hard to raise kids, because they will do what we do, not what we say. My daughter is living proof of this, right? We have a device problem in our house. All of us, every single person, my husband and I have trouble setting down our phones and computers at night. Ember has a hard time setting down her iPad and her video games. So we made a rule, a family device curfew. We said 7:30, no personal devices after 7:30, but Rob and I, we knew that in order for this to work, we would also have to set down our devices at 7:30. We couldn't just tell her to do it and then sneak them behind her back. That wasn't gonna work. For it to be effective, we would have to observe the boundary as well. And we wanted to. I mean, day one, we were all in, but by like day 3, we're 3 days into the curfew, it's 10 p.m., Ember comes running out of Rob's office going, "Daddy's on his computer, he's watching YouTube videos about boats." I mean, she was so busted, he was so busted by her 9-year-old. And now, because of that experience, of course, it's harder for her to want to observe the boundary because she assumes that we're just telling her to get off her device, and then as soon as she goes to sleep at night, we're back on our devices. And she would be correct, because her father and I are hypocrites. Hypocritical is defined as this: characterized by behaviors that contradicts one's stated values. For example, it's hypocritical to demand everyone in the house put their device down at 7:30 when I continue to use my device to look at boats. It's not just him, right? It's me. Memes are my love language. I can't stop looking at them. So love, this passage tells us, must be unhypocritical. In other words, when I claim to love someone, my actions must be in line with that claim of loving them. My actions must be in line with my stated value of loving them. My actions, mind you, not my feelings, my actions. In other words, your actions can be loving to someone that you don't actually feel like loving, because it's about your actions. Love is an action word. When Jesus prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane that this cup would pass from him, that God would find another way to complete the saving of the world, it's because he didn't feel like going to the cross for us. It's because he didn't feel like loving us to death, but he did it anyway, because love is an action word. So verse 9 is our thesis. Love must be unhypocritical if we want to have good relationships. And the remainder of the verses then tell us exactly what types of behaviors will cultivate these good relationships. What actions are unhypocritical love? So here we go, verse 10. Be devoted to one another in love. If you want to cultivate good relationships, you have to be devoted. And being devoted means being loyal even when it's inconvenient, not just when it's convenient for us. My Aunt Linda, she takes care of just everyone in her family. She watches her daughter's 2 kids while her daughter drives the bus for the Pittsburgh Port Authority. She takes care of her husband, who has a lot of health issues himself. She takes care of her mom, my great Aunt Patsy, who's 93 and seems to be on track to outlive us all. And honestly, it's too much, right? It's just too much on her all of the time. She's doing everything. She needs to get some help. And we tell her she needs to get some help, but because we live in Florida and she lives in Pittsburgh, it's very easy to say you need to get some help. It's very hard for us to render that help ourselves. But my mom, my late mom, who had moved down to Florida a few years ago, despite the fact that it was inconvenient because she had a bad knee and a bad hamstring, she still flew up to Pittsburgh a couple times a year to spend a month helping Linda with my Aunt Patsy. And not only was it inconvenient, it was actually very emotionally hard because Aunt Patsy has dementia to some extent. She's not, she's there sometimes, and sometimes she's not completely in touch with reality. And so she would have these moments with my mom, and my Aunt Patsy loves shoes. She's just obsessed with shoes. She thinks they're the bee's knees. And so when she was having these moments of incoherence, she would look at my mom's shoes and she would say, are those my shoes? And Mom would say, no, Aunt Patsy, I got them at such and such in Florida. And Aunt Patsy would say, okay. And then she'd wait till my mom went to the bathroom. And then as soon as my mom went to the bathroom, Aunt Patsy would steal her shoes. She would steal them and hide them somewhere. We still don't know where. My mom does not know where her shoes were going. Well, maybe she knows now because she's in heaven, but we never found them on earth. Somewhere hidden in a box or behind a wall somewhere in Geneva-on-the-Lake, Ohio, is a giant stash of my mother's stolen shoes. But my mom still went faithfully every 6 months or so to help, even though she had her own problems to worry about, even though she came home shoeless, although she probably breezed right through TSA. Now, as a recovering codependent myself, I do understand the danger of telling anyone who is already a natural helper to go help some more, because they will, right? Even to their own detriment. So if that's you, I'm not talking to you. You've done enough. The best thing you can do for all of us is to just take a nap. But for those of us who do have some capacity, but maybe we avoid relationships with needy people because we've seen what it does to the people who get involved, and we're afraid that we're gonna get sucked into some vortex where we just have to give and we can never escape from it. We keep telling the Aunt Lindas of the world that they need to take a break. And they do. It's not healthy to be in that position. Yes, I agree she needs a break. This isn't healthy, but I would add this to it. Aunt Linda can't take a break until I take a shift, because love is an action word. Verse 10b, honor one another above yourselves. I have a pet peeve. I hate it when people use the phrase, I was so humbled, because I don't think they actually mean it. I think they mean the opposite of it. I was so humbled that you elected me to be your PTA president. No, you weren't. You weren't humbled by that. You don't run for PTA president unless you think you can do a better job than everyone else. You weren't humbled. You were honored. You were honored, and that's okay. You should be honored. I'm sure you're going to do a great job, but let's call a duck a duck. Humbled is the wrong word. To honor someone means to confer distinction or praise upon someone else. It's giving other people credit and looking for places to give other people credit more than we try to take credit ourselves. I was in a meeting with my friend Ashlyn, and she threw out a really good idea, and then the room kind of took the idea and pulled it apart and put it back together and massaged it, and finally they decided, this is a good idea, we're gonna do this idea. And after all of that, someone said, Ashlyn, what a great idea. And she said, that's all you guys. I'm just here for the friends. And if you know Ashlyn, you know that tracks. She's just great. Who doesn't want to be around someone like that? I don't know if you work with anyone who's a glory hog, just someone who's always taking credit for other people's ideas, even if at best they had an assist. I bet you don't want to be around them if you don't have to. She wanted to give away credit. Even though it was hers, even though she could have taken credit, she chose to honor other people above herself, because love is an action word. Verse 11, I'm gonna use the ELT or the NLT for this because it's a little easier. Never be lazy, but work hard and serve the Lord enthusiastically. Do you ever get lazy in the context of your relationships, your friendships, any of it? I used to hate American Idol auditions because there always seemed to be someone who was on that show just for comic relief that the nation could make fun of. They shouldn't have been there. They somehow got through because no one told them that they couldn't sing. And it made me feel really guilty because I dated a guy in my high school youth group, and he played the guitar and he sang. And at the guitar, he was absolutely gifted. He was a gifted musician, but his singing voice was just so very bad. And I didn't have the heart to tell him that. He loved to sing, and he would sing me songs all the time. To this day, I regret not telling him that. Because it will be my fault if he ends up on American Idol auditions. And I don't want that for him. In his commentary on Romans, Tim Keller says it this way: any love that is afraid to confront the beloved is not really love, but a selfish desire to be loved. It makes an idol out of the beloved. It says, I'll do anything to keep him or her loving me. This is not loving the person, it's loving the love you get from the person. So any love that cuts corners morally or fails in honesty is not really love at all. Now, we can argue about whether or not it was really necessary for me to tell my boyfriend, break the news to him that he was tone deaf, but I bet there are actually important conversations in your life that you have been avoiding having because you're afraid of what it will do to the relationship and you don't want to rock the boat. But if you love your friends, honesty is always a gift. It's always a gift because we're supposed to sharpen each other, right? We're supposed to make each other better, and that takes work, and it takes risk, to risk giving feedback that might challenge the ease of the relationship, to risk being willing to receive that feedback, even when it's hard for us to hear because it challenges who we see ourselves as at our core identity. Now, not everyone in your life deserves an all-access pass to your entire life, but a few people should have one. A few people should have one. You should give them the keys and encourage them to ask you the tough questions and be someone who is willing to ask them the tough questions on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Sometimes I think we avoid tough conversations with people closest to us, and we say it's because we want to spare their feelings, but I'm not sure that's entirely it. I think it's some of that's it, but I think it's also because we don't want to lose the ease that we have in that relationship, the comfort, the knowing that they're always going to be on our side. And so we avoid tough conversations for this reason too. I've certainly done it before, but we lose something more important than ease when we avoid honesty with the people that God has given us to love. It takes work to be a good friend. We can't be lazy about it because love is an action word. Verse 12, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Is there anyone in your life that is hard to love? Think about it for a second. My late mom and my late brother Jason had a complicated relationship, not least of all because of his struggles with addiction and hers with codependency. My dad's alcoholism and absence, of course, played a big part in that too. But even from a really young age, Jason could be incredibly hard to love. And his behavior ranged from silly things like throwing my mom's chicken and dumplings at her after she had made dinner that led to a food fight where we all ended up laughing, to more dangerous behaviors like pouring Drano on her mattress and not telling her about it when he was like 12 years old. He was really troubled. And it made him hard to love. But my mom always held out hope that things would get better with and for him. She never gave up on him. I honestly don't know how she found the love and patience in her heart to cook that boy dinner again after that incident, but she did. She was patient in affliction. After she died, I found a box of prayers that she had written to God, and so many of them, more than half of them, were about Jason, and some of them were years old prayers. She was faithful in prayer. Now, there are certain people in our lives that I think we do need to be released from because of the damage that they not just caused in the past, but continue to cause in the present that is or borders on abuse. It's not love to let them continue to abuse you. It just allows them to pile sins on top of their own heads. But then there are relationships that God has not released us from that require more hope and patience and prayer than we think we have in us. But they're worth it. We may not get to see the fruit soon or ever, but they're worth it. Before he died, my brother got sober and he met his wife in a Christian rehab program, and they had 2 beautiful boys and had a decade of just a lovely experience of life. They had their family. They led the Celebrate Recovery ministry at their church. He played the drums in the band. And when my brother got married, I cried my eyes out watching him and my mom dance to their first dance to a Paul Simon song whose lyrics said this: when I was a little boy and the devil would call my name, I'd say, now, who do you think you're fooling? I'm a consecrated boy. I'm a singer in a Sunday choir. Oh, my mama loves me. She loves me. She'd get down on her knees and hug me. Boy, she loves me like a rock. And she did, because love is an action word. Verse 13, share with the Lord's people, those who are in need. Practice hospitality. Jason died about 8 years ago at the age of 36, and one of the things I will always miss most about him was being at Thanksgiving at his house with him and his family. Our whole family would go to him for Thanksgiving. They had the big, giant dining table that they'd inherited from my late grandparents. And Jason was really active in his AA and NA groups, and he made friends with everyone. He seemed to take a special joy in making friends with people who other people would tend to avoid. I have to imagine this is out of gratitude because people loved him when he was very unlovable too. And so one of the fun things about Thanksgiving at Jason's house was there was always some colorful characters there that we did not expect and weren't sure what was going to happen. Because Jason, he just couldn't bear for anyone in his church to eat Thanksgiving alone. And so he would invite all of them to his house. And so the first year that I took my now husband, Rob, to my brother's for Thanksgiving, we were just dating at the time. And we went up to Pittsburgh, and Jason had invited an eccentric young fellow named Dave to dinner. And after dinner, Jason had gotten a couple of small gifts for my boyfriend, Rob, and for Dave, the friend he had invited. And he had gotten Rob a headlamp and Dave a Swiss Army knife. So he gave them these gifts. But Dave sees Rob's present and says super loud, "Oh man, I'd much rather have that." And so Rob, being a polite Midwesterner, was like, "Oh, okay, we can trade." And so they trade the gifts. But then Dave sees the price tag on the headlamp and he goes, "Oh wait, this one's cheaper. Give the other one back." And Rob's like, "Oh, okay." And so he gave him the gift back. And I'm watching all of this from the couch, just cringing on the inside, thinking, there's no way that he chooses to marry into my family after this. But he did. And then I met his family and realized he was probably worried about the same thing. But I miss those dinners, and I admire that part of my brother that would imperil his own holidays to include people who weren't welcome elsewhere, because love is an action word. Verse 14, bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse. I hesitate to preach on this verse because I can't say I've ever really been persecuted in my life. I was bullied for being overweight as a kid. Some of my family members make fun of me for being a Christian, but that's not really persecution the way that I think we mean it here. Certainly not the kind of persecution that would cause someone to be thrown into a lion's den or to be put into a furnace or to be punished for their faith or their ethnicity or their caste. The suffering that I've experienced in my life is not even in that category, but that actually makes this verse more convicting to me and more compelling, because God is calling people who are actually persecuted to bless the ones who persecute them, to pray for them, to feed them when they're hungry and clothe them if they're naked. So if that is possible through the strength of Christ, if it's possible to bless those who truly persecute me, then how much more possible should it be for me to bless those who simply annoy me or irritate me or hurt my feelings with their words? My daughter's 9, but she knows all the curse words, and she knows them because I have shared them with her. Don't judge me, Christians, before you know the point. Kids do things that they're forbidden from doing. They love to do things that are forbidden because it's mysterious and they want to know what's going to happen and all of that. So I've tried to kind of demystify the curse words for her, hopefully to make them less fun to say. And so I shared with Ember my philosophy on cursing, which is this: what makes a curse word bad is how we use it, not anything inherent in the word itself. So, if someone's offended by them and we say them anyway, that's bad. That's a bad use of the word. If we curse at someone or about them, that's obviously bad. That's what makes it bad, because cursing isn't just saying bad words, it's using those words to wish bad things onto someone else. In fact, I would argue that we can curse people very effectively without using curse words. And we can bless people very effectively without using traditionally blessing words. Who in your life do you feel persecuted by? Like right now? Is it the politics? I bet it's the politics. Winter's coming, and by winter I mean November. But according to this verse, we are not only capable, but called to bless people who persecute us, and by extension, certainly people who just annoy us and offend us with their personal or political beliefs. And blessing them doesn't mean simply you say good things to them, good words to them, like, I hope you have a great weekend, when inside you're thinking, I hope you drop your iPhone in the toilet, because that's not really blessing them, even though the words are good. Blessing isn't just saying good words to them, it means using words to wish good things onto them. And the simplest way to do this, guys, is prayer. Do you pray for the people who get on your nerves? Do you pray for the people who persecute you? Because you can't fake that with God. He knows. He knows how you feel. And again, it's not about our feelings, it's about our actions. If your behavior is to pray blessings over them anyway, that is love in action. Especially if you think they're ungodly. If you think that they're so terrible, the most godly response that you could have would be to pray that they get to heaven, not to hope that they burn in hell. Because love is an action word. Verse 15. Rejoice with those who mourn. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Last year, when my mom passed away, suddenly I felt so overwhelmed by everything that I had to do and just the amount of stuff, pictures, objects that she had kept that I had to go through that I didn't know what to do with. And my best friend, who knew that she couldn't do these things for me, but wanted to be there for me, she rented an Airbnb for a weekend, and we took all that stuff there, and she just sat there with me while I went through all of these pictures and all of these things and cried and told stories about what was in the pictures and all the elementary school chess trophies, and she just sat there while I cried and told her stories. And she didn't tell me to cheer up, and she didn't tell me to look at the bright side. She just stayed there and let me cry. And her presence there was such a gift, because there's only one thing worse than being sad, and that's being alone and being sad. And if that sounds familiar, it's because I'm quoting Ted Lasso, and I want to honor him above myself. It's deeply uncomfortable to be with people in their grief. That's why people end up trying to resolve the tension, and they end up saying incredibly stupid things to people who have just lost someone. Don't ever say, everything happens for a reason. That's like the worst thing that you can say to someone who's just lost someone, especially if it's like a baby or a mom. Don't say that. That doesn't actually resolve the tension for them, and it barely resolves the tension for you. Just being with people is a gift. It's uncomfortable to be with them in their grief, their depression, but love is just being there. Even if it's uncomfortable, be there anyway, because love is an action word. Verse 16, we're getting there, I promise. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. When I was in middle school, I was in every way wildly unpopular, but there was one girl in school who was more unpopular than me. We'll call her Janet. And the first day of middle school, I caught the bus that morning, and at the next bus stop, Janet was getting on the bus, and I saw her looking around at what seats were available, and she looked at mine, which probably seemed the least threatening because of how unpopular I was. And I saw it happening, and so I quickly took my book bag and I put it in the empty spot in the seat next to me. And she saw me do it, and she just kind of sighed deeply and then kept walking to find another seat. I still feel shame over that to this day, so much so that I've tried to find her on social media so that I could issue a formal and profound amends, but I can't find her. She has kept herself well hidden, probably because of events and experiences like this one. And the irony is that I was so lonely in middle school. I was so alone, and I tried so hard to impress the kids who had more social clout than I did. And the thing is, Janet might have been a great friend. She might have been my best friend if I'd just let her sit down. I was trying to meet a need in myself that was unmet in my family of origin, the need to feel valued and loved and wanted by someone whose opinions seemed to carry weight in the world. Unfortunately, in most middle school worlds, those people are Jared the quarterback and Chastity the cheerleader, but the truth is that we carry this need well into our adulthood. We're still trying to feel wanted and valued and needed by someone whose opinion carries the most weight in the world. But we forget that the person whose opinion carries the most weight in the world because he created the world has already called us beloved. And he wanted us so much that he died so that he could have us. Each of us is still a person of low position that Jesus is not ashamed to be seen with anyway. The truth is, we are loved beyond what we could ever imagine, and that truth will set us free from trying to find in people what we can only find in Jesus. And instead of that, instead of trying to find people who will meet that need in us, we can start looking for people who need to feel that they're loved, who need someone to tell them that they matter. And we can give them a glimpse of the love of Jesus. We can start making room in our seat for them, because love is an action word. Our last verses, 17 and 18, I'm going to lump together. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. In my family of origin, intelligence was a currency. When I was growing up, my mom would play these cassette tapes in our car. I think they were called word builders, and it was just a series of stories with different vocabulary words baked into them. I learned words like quixotic, which means idealistically romantic to the point of fantasy. If you want to use it in a sentence, the peasant girl's quixotic optimism fed her unrealistic hopes of one day becoming a princess, unless that peasant girl is Meghan Markle, in which case she was not quixotic at all. So there are always these big words in my childhood, and I love it. I think it was absolutely well-intentioned, and it cultivated in me a love for language that I still have today. But those weren't the only words in my childhood. There was also a lot of yelling, a lot of curse words. I learned from a very young age that I had a talent for using words, but the two-edged sword was that I could use these words to hurt just as efficiently as I could use them to heal. And so when fights would erupt in my house, the curse words were flying and everyone was hurting each other with words. I could find just the right combination of words to completely eviscerate the person who had hurt me. My tongue was venomous, and I knew it. And so when I became a Christian, I felt so convicted of this, and I begged God to help me change it. And the strategy that seemed most reasonable for me was to leave the situation. When the emotions started to heat up, when I started to want to use my tongue in that painful, hurtful way, I would just leave the situation. I'd go take a walk around the block or something, wait until I was calm again, and come back and re-enter the situation. And that seemed like a pretty good system to me, right? It helped a lot when I was a kid, but then years later, when I started dating Rob, I was still using that strategy until one day he shared with me like how incredibly hurtful it was for me we would start an argument and then I would get mad and I would just leave. And he felt incredibly hurt by that instead of me staying to talk things out. And I'd convinced myself that I was doing him a favor. Like, man, I am sparing you so much. Like, you don't know what I'm like. But really what I was avoiding was doing the hard work of growing. I was avoiding the hard work of getting better, of learning how to fight fair, of disciplining my temper. Now, I am grateful to God that he gave me that strategy when I was in high school, that stepping stone for me to move forward. But at 28, I needed to put on my big girl pants and get better and mature. Johnny has often reminded us that the pastoral letters like these were written to a group of people who couldn't just get into a car and drive away from Paul or from the other people that were making them crazy. They had to work it out. They couldn't just leave. To live at peace with everyone, we have to be with that everyone. We shouldn't insulate ourselves from the communal aspects of life in order to avoid sacrificial love. If we claim to love one another, but then we drive away when the relationship gets tough, that behavior is not consistent with our stated value, and love must be unhypocritical. So if we were made for relationships, and those relationships are to be good, the way that we make them good is by taking a shift so that they can take a break, because love is an action word. It's by giving credit away instead of trying to seek it for ourselves, because love is an action word. It means telling each other the truth in love, even when it's risky, because love is an action word. It means not giving up on those tough relationships, but holding out hope, being faithful in prayer, patient in affliction, because love is an action word. It means sharing a meal with the people that others avoid, because love is an action word. It's praying for those who harm us, using words to call good things down on them, because love is an action word. It's sitting in the discomfort of someone else's grief, because love is an action word. And it's making space in your seat for someone who needs it, because love is an action word. It's fighting through the desire to run away from these challenges, the challenges that we all face in community, because we know that all of us together reflect the image of God better than any one of us can alone, because love is an action word. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you for your love, for the ways that you have chosen to seek after us, even though we didn't deserve it, for the ways in which you have made room in your seat for us. Lord, thank you for taking such loving actions toward us, even when you may not have felt like doing it. Lord, we are saved. We are rescued because of your actions. Lord, I pray that each of us would be able to find gratitude as we consider how unhypocritical your love is and has always been. And I pray that we would strive to love people better, less hypocritically, that we would love people more sincerely in these ways, not because we're afraid of displeasing you or we're afraid you're going to get mad at us, but out of gratitude for love that you've already given. So Lord, be near to us. Help us find the places in our lives. Help us see and recognize the spaces where we need to take a shift or make room or keep praying or stay instead of running away. Lord, help us to be a better reflection of you together. We pray these things in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, in whom we put our hope. Amen.
Everything holds together, hold us together. Everything holds together in you. Everything holds together, hold us together. Everything holds together in you. You are the first, you'll be the last. So meet us in the middle. Sometimes we feel so little. You are the head, we are your body. We walk in your direction, finding our perfection. Everything holds together, hold us together. Everything holds together in you. Everything holds together, hold us together. Everything holds together in you. You are the King who bled for peace, put the nations back together and show us how to live forever. Yeah, yeah. Try to live forever, yeah, yeah. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Show us how to live forever. Everything holds together, hold us together. Everything holds together in you. Everything holds together, hold us together. Everything holds together in you. Everything holds together in you. Everything holds together in you.
We're reminded today that love is in fact an action word, and love is realized through community. And we know in forming and sustaining our communities, it can be difficult and hard, and a lot of times we may want to run away because it's easier. But we are reminded that those things are only realized and achieved through beautiful and beloved community. Thank you, Kaylee, for that reminder.
And we would love to be in community with you, whether that's online on our social media platforms, Facebook or Instagram, or connecting with us right here on YouTube. We would love to engage with you this week.